2000, he is full professor of architectural design at the School of Architecture of the University of Rome, Roma III, where he is coordinator of the doctorate in landscape of the contemporary city. He has been visiting professor in many schools of architecture. From 1998 to 2002, he has been coordinator for the analysis unit of the Department for Development and Cohesion Policies of the Italian Ministry of Treasury, Budget and Economic Planning. Since 2016, he is member of the scientific community of Industria Italiana della Costruzione. He is author of numerous critical and theoretical texts of architectural and urban design.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your kind invitation. My presentation, as a general title of my presentation, I propose, as you can see, creativity versus extravagance. The theme that I want to have a confrontation is the general theme that opposes, in my opinion, the creativity and the extravagance. Contemporary architecture more and more have an continuous, exhausting confrontation with creativity that often is confused with extravagance. On the opposite, personally, I think that creativity have to be the main instrument that we have in our hand to solve problem. Please use creativity to solve problems of architecture, is what I say to my students in architecture. Unfortunately, more and more I see that in contemporary architecture, creativity is used not to solve problems, but, let me say, to add problems, to create unusual problem, additional problem. So when we find the problem, my suggestion is to accept the presence of the problem, not cancel the problem like the problem doesn't exist, but to grow with the problem and use creativity to solve it, okay? So, all the 4 projects that I will show you try to use creativity and forms in this direction. Forms and creativity are not, coming from relationship with God, but with relationship with reality, with specifically reality. Problems are not problems out of us. There is not an engineer that solves our problems. We have to be able to solve alone our problem, And to do that, it's necessary accept the idea that architecture has to confront with specific, realistic problems of life, of construction, of gravity, sometime of gravity, why the buildings stand up. Okay, so 4 projects. all projects that I will show you are designed in team with ABDR. D is me, and then there is A, that is Maria Laura Arlotti, and B, Michele Beccu, and R, that is Filippo Raimondo. This picture is with the fifth person, that is Zubin Mehta, that is the conductor of the Maggio Musicale Fiorentino. We was introducing him the project that we just won for the Opera Lyric Theatre in Florence. That is just opened. That is opened in 2011. In this case, the problem with that, we have confrontation, specific problem that try to solve through creativity. First of all, a problem of context. Second, the problem with the not physical but historical context. And third, of course, a typical problem of an auditorium, of an opera lyric theater, that is acoustic. You know. So both in this case, all in these three cases, we try to use creativity and forms to solve problem, not technology, you know, or let's say not only technology. So first of all, a problem of relationship with context. As you can see, this is the theater, and context, the area in that there is the theater is real and let's say missing link between the center of the city, that is the Città Medicea, the city of Medici, no, the Renaissance area of Florence, and the Parco delle Cascine, that is the great area, let's say, in certain sense we can say a central park of not New York but of Florence, you know. And this area is exactly in between, is the missing link between the Pietre dei Medici and the Green Park. So the project that we propose is something that is also in the middle. It's not a building, no, but is not a natural element. It's an artificial element, but like in a natural element here, it's possible to go up and down, don't have a floor. Any floor is also terrace. Any terrace is also piazza, square, and position. So it's a multi-level floor in that outside and inside are completely confused. Another important element, another important presence in this project is light, in particular artificial light, that we use also in certain sense to express, to show in physical sense the acoustic volume that every night is inside, no? This kind of bombing of acoustic, the explosion of acoustic that we have through the artificial light. This is the daylight that is completely without light, and this is the nocturnal light, the artificial light that transform, as you can see, the building itself in a huge urban lamp, in a huge urban signal, let's say. Personally, I like buildings able to produce in self light, no, not lightened, let's say, but in self lighted, producing lighted. In this sense, I say that my architecture is an architecture luciferina, not in sense the Lucifer, the devil, but in sense to luciferina, that means in Italian portatrice di luce, that give lights to the context. You know. This is the scenic tower that slowly and slowly during the night transforms itself in a huge urban lamp. This is the top of the main room that is also an room, is a cavea for outside concert hall. Dimension is for 2,500 people, but this huge cavea, marble cavea, is also a huge piece of artificial land. I say before that this is in certain senses the missing link between the city itself and the park. You know, this is a piece of land. Knowing that there is possible to have through that it's possible to have an new, completely new artificial view of the landscape, also of the historical landscape of Florence, an eccentric point of view of the center of the city. Eccentric because usually the view of the center is the city is from the hills that stay around. This is the only building inside, let's say, the historical center that consent the view of the historical center. So entrance and lobby, and with this slide start the second problem that we try to solve through creativity. And the second problem is confrontation and problem of the historical confrontation with the context. You know, Florence, like Roma, is one of the most important historical cities in the world. But personally, I think that the dialectic between classic and modern is, in certain sense, a false dialectic. You know, and personally, I think that modern architecture can have the cleverness to reabsorb, you know, the confrontation with history, not through language, but through, for example, material, colors. That's the reason why in absolutely modern forms of architecture, we use colors and materials that became from the historical tradition of the city of Florence, in particular the incredible gold-painted bowls that is in the lobby, that is the bottom of the main room, and then the marble, that is the marble of the cavea, and also the main facade, that is exactly the marble used for the Battistero di Firenze, marmo cipollino. And then the scenic tower that I show you, in that we used an cotto, that is the typical local cotto, bricks of cotto. This gold here is exactly the Medicean gold painted of the ceiling of the room of Medici, and you know, to realize an so huge surface in gold was an hazard, of course, but you know, in certain sense, yeah, all this surface, you know, bombed and is realized in gold, but in certain sense is more and more contextualized with this streak than with language, I think. So this is the main room. This is a section to the main room, and this is the scenic tower. The external of the scenic tower is the cotto skin that lamps in, in the night. The main room is for 1,550 persons. And the third problem with that we have a confrontation in this case, in the case of an auditorium, is of course the problem of acoustics. So at the end, if you will have the possibility, the opportunity to design an auditorium, your architecture will be good or not in reason of the acoustic answer of your space, you know. So this is the render. Through that we won the competition, and this is the realization that is exactly the same one. But between this phase and this phase, there is a lot of work, of course. And the only secret that we use also in this phase was to work integrated, in integration with an acoustic engineer, that is Jürgen Reinhold from the Müller Acoustic from Monaco, that is the same acoustic company that made the main opera lyric theater in Europe, in particular in Roma, Auditorium from Renzo, piano is becoming from them, and so on and so on. So when we start the competition, so this phase, I asked to him, well, is it possible to try to think to the form of a theater like we can try to a form of a violin, or in general of a form of a musical instrument? In that, as we can know, as we know, is the form itself that ensures the best acoustic answer to the instrument. And he laughed at, because it's of course it's possible. Theoretically it's possible, he said, no, but will be really difficult, because it's a simple, if you have in your hand a violin, you know, because violin have no other problem than the acoustic answer. So the form of violin ensure exactly the optimization of that acoustic dimension, you know. But in this case, you have very deep confrontation between tones, high and low, human voice, and then the same instrument that is form, you have to use to solve problems that are, you know, structural problem, fire engineering problem, security problem, and so on and so on and so on. Visibility problem, because this is a theater, not only an auditorium, no? It's an opera lyric theater, so it's necessary to have any singular position. But, you know, the result is this one that you can see. It's a final result, very particular, because you know, at the end, the form, it's very similar, very near to the horseshoes that is typical in the Italian tradition of the Renaissance theater, opera lyric theater, no? That was horseshoes. And optimize through forms, no? exactly the acoustic condition for any singular seating position. There is also this particularity of the palchi and galleria, in that we use this this trick, that is that we like in ice cream basket, we move with a lot of piece of ice cream, we move material, no, and obtaining something that don't have any vertical necessity for security. Yeah. Second project that I show you is the project for the Archaeological Museum of Reggio Calabria. It's a particular project because the original one is a project from Marcello Piacentini, that is one of the most famous architects during the 30s and 30s and also 50s. Was necessary, and we start with this problem, to optimize the anti-earthquake dynamic condition of the building in general. So the idea, as you can see here, was to realize a very important new structural element that is a new internal skin in the position of the present courtyard, but also to use this courtyard, let's say, as a new internal lobby with total height of the building, and using the new skin not only to reinforce the building, but also to realize an eco thermo system of natural refreshness and thermal during the winter. So to do that, we cover the top of the courtyard with a floor, a glass floor, and the solar insulation produce thermal during the winter, but produce during the summer ventilation tanks to the because as you know, the warm air goes up, goes out through the chimney, and asks for fresh air that came from the basement. So there is a continuous loop between warm and fresh air that naturally produce the refreshing of the building. We add also a new floor, that is this one, that is the cafeteria of the building. The internal of cafeteria is the floor that cover the internal courtyard. And so this is the section, and this is the new floor. So at this point, the big problem was the structure of this element here, because the courtyard is quite large, more than this room. You know, it's 28 meters for 14 meters. So as you can imagine, to realize a new floor, a new glass floor, anyway, was necessary to produce large beams. And our idea, when we start, was to realize, to use a structure, a special structure, able to be like a pincushion, let's say, in the space. The name of this kind of structure is tensegrity. Tensegrity is a structure that stays up thanks to the tension, not to the compression. So the only compressed element are the bar, but all the rest of elements are transformed in cable, in cable. So at the end, the result is something like this, that is really transparent if you look from down. You know. There is also an important installation in the museum, that is this one, becoming from an important Italian artist. As you can see, realize an new facade, let's say, that is red painted in the back. That's produced red shadows, dynamic red shadows, thanks to the continuous movement of the sun, of course. Yeah, this is the structure from the bottom. As you can see, there is almost invisible structure, thanks to the presence of cable. If you look at the structure transversal, of course, you can see this pincushion, let's say. And then, of course, there is all the rehabilitation of the internal exposition. That is a very important exposition because it's the exposition of the Magna Grecia. That means all the presence of Greece in Italy after first century after Christ. So we redesign all the elements for exposition. That's it. That's it. And in particular, we design also the basement for these two fantastic warriors that are the most important archaeological element present in the collection, named Bronzi di Riace. Problem for them was to realize something anti-earthquake also as a basement. So also in this case, we try to use form and creativity as a solution, not technological solution, but formal solution to the problem of earthquake. And the anti-earthquake basement that we produce is very simple, because it's a slab of marble, another slab of marble, and in the middle, as you can see, 4 spheres of the same marble, 10 centimeters, that are inside an element, yeah, like this. Yeah. So excavated element. So when start the earthquake, never goes out, you know, the marble element. You know? So it's a way to realize an efficient mechanism through form, through morphology, not through technology. Yeah, some other rendering and then realization. The view is fantastic because it's the museum is in Reggio Calabria, that is the city just in front to Sicily in Italy. No? So this is Stretto di Messina, and that is Sicily, the island that is just in front of this. Yeah. The third project that I show you is a project that is under construction in this moment, and is the new railroad station in Casablanca. We won competition in 2013, and project, it's a bridge station that cross over, that start in coincidence with the old colonial small and nice station of Casablanca. Partially used this one as a VIP lounge for the king, that is connected with the new one. And then starting from here, there is a bridge that cross over that cross over the tracks, the piers and the tracks of the railroad tracks, and goes to the other side. So it's also a way to link two parts of the city, because of course bridge stations are also a very important public space. You know, this is the bridge, as you can see, and this is the provisional of the iron plan with tracks and so on. This is the connection to the original colonial station, and all the connection. And so one atrium is this one. I see that also in another rendering was the same person that stayed in our rendering in the lecture before. It's incredible, like the person in the rendering are almost the same, everywhere the same. They walk and walk and walk and stay in rendering all around the world. Anyway, so this is the south atrium, the west atrium, and this is the east atrium. The east atrium is characterized to the upper structure that is self-structured and goes down in this direction. And this is the western piazza. Also, in this case, we try to use colors and materials very near to the local tradition, but not with the same language, you know, and rethought of rethinking, you know, of the local tradition, in particular the tradition of the frame that they have, named Musharabia. No, that is the frame. Through that they framed the solar insolation, and then that is this one, and then another particular element is the vertical one, that is bricks in stucco, realized in Italy, and very, very near to their tradition of colored ceramics that is typical in Casablanca. Yeah, this is the top of the King V plunge, and so then this is a project in Rome we just start to realize in these days, and this is a very, very particular condition because it's a station of the subway line C that they are realizing in Rome. Line C in Rome, line C of the subway is just realized between this station here that is very far and this station here that is San Giovanni. Here is Ambaradam, that is the station that I design, and starting from here is necessary to go down in the center of Rome with a special machine that ensure an excavation underground. The name is tunnel breaking machine, talpa in Italiano. That is a huge element that underground excavated and remove the ground, the excavated ground. But to do that, it's necessary to go down with this tunnel breaking machine, and going down exactly in this point, they yeah, this is the place. Imagine is a box of 110 meters for 50 meters, 55 meters. So they realized, first of all, the wall in perimeter condition, and then they approached to excavate in the internal of this box. After the program provided, after removing all the ground here, they go down with the tunnel breaking machine and start to move in the center of the room. But immediately they find an incredible presence that is this caserme. Caserme means military. Oddio, come si dice caserme in italiano? Come? Beh, quello. Caserme di Adriano, di Centuria Adrianei, was a very important military corps in Rome. Just to have an idea, was the Centuria that realized the Vallo di Adriano in England. So, and was directly the head was directly the emperor. You know. So, what is incredible is that all this caserme was exactly with the same line, with the same geometry, with the same axis, you know, of excavation, you know. So the problem in this case is not only, of course, to try to realize something that consent to the station, the actual station, to survive together the presence, but also to understand what, in this case, no, what archaeology can be. So it's really important, these ruins, because this is, you know, in Rome we have a lot, but really a lot, and more important than this. No? So what kind of restoration we can reserve to them to transform them in something really special, really important, like really special and important was in the history, this element. So our answer was to have a direct confrontation with the Mura Aureliane, the Roman wall that is just in front of the excavation. But Mura Aureliane that you can see here have two levels. Yeah, this is a level here. Picture that I show you is from here. Okay, so this picture is from here. Okay, but here the ground go up through the century at this level. So there is no more possibility to look at the wall. And the ruins are over here. So my idea was to restore not the ruins, but the landscape, making something like this, removing all the ground and reconnect, you know, the caserme with the wall, with the view of the wall. So something that is an, you know, restoration of landscape, of historical landscape. Immediately problem was that when we start to remove down the other part of ground, we discover this one. So there is another level. There is another level. And this level is more and more important because it's the level, yeah, first level is this, and second level is that. And second level is more and more important because it's the house of the head of the commander, and the commander was the emperor. So there is as you can see, is more and more important, the floors, the ceiling, the furniture, the marble, the mosaics, the ceiling, and so on. So the final project provides a double level that confront itself with the wall, thanks to removing this part of ground. So for all the dimension of the station go down later, and then down to the museum, the new museum, that is a territorial museum, that is the station. Okay. So this is the new position, plans, and rendering from the wall to the wall, internal, but in particular, as you can see, direct connection between the ruins and, the wall. So it's restored a complete piece of land, let's say, not only a singular element that is nothing, in self. Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.